Have you ever wondered why someone you cared so deeply for could seem so distant, even when you gave them everything? Why your emotional investment felt one-sided, like you were reaching across a canyon they refused to cross? Hi, I'm Jim Rohn, and today we're diving into a question that has left so many strong, loving people feeling lost and unseen. Why don't they seem to care the way you do? Why does closeness feel natural to you but seem to trigger withdrawal in them? It's a painful reality when someone reappears in your life, says all the right things, stirs old hopes, but still stays just out of reach emotionally. It's not just confusing, it can make you doubt yourself. You start asking, am I too much? Am I asking for something they simply can't give? But what if the answer isn't that you're too much, or that you loved wrong? What if the real answer lies in understanding their internal world, a world shaped by fear, avoidance, and an uneasy relationship with emotional closeness? In today's video, we're not just going to decode avoidant behavior. We're going to reframe it so you can stop personalizing their distance and start protecting your own peace. Because once you understand the psychology behind why they pull away, you'll stop chasing answers outside yourself and start standing firmer in your own emotional clarity. If you're tired of confusing mixed signals, tired of wondering if love is supposed to feel this uncertain, stay with me until the end. This conversation could be the turning point you didn't know you were ready for. And if you find these kinds of insights helpful on your healing journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you deserve clarity, not confusion, when it comes to love. Let's get started. If you've ever felt confused, hurt, or wondering why your ex or your partner seems so distant, even after everything you shared, you're not imagining it. Chances are you were dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style. And today I want to help you truly understand what that means, how it impacts not just your relationship, but your self-esteem, and most importantly, what you can do now to protect your peace, whether you're hoping to rebuild with them or move forward without them. Understanding this dynamic is crucial. It's not just about what went wrong or what they did or didn't give you. It's also about recognizing your own role in the emotional pattern and learning how to break free into healthier, more nourishing relationships, whether with them, changed and willing, or with someone new who meets you with true emotional presence. So let's first understand the avoidant mindset. And I say this from personal experience too. I've lived it. Even now, in vulnerable moments, old patterns sometimes whisper in my ear. At the core of the avoidant style is a deep reverence for independence. It's not about not caring, it's about survival. Many people with avoidant tendencies grew up believing that depending on others was risky, that needing someone meant setting themselves up for disappointment. So, from a young age, they learned, handle it alone. Don't ask, don't need, don't feel too much. When independence becomes your emotional armor, intimacy doesn't feel safe. It feels threatening. Letting someone in showing weakness, needing connection, it goes against the grain of everything they built to stay protected. And it's not always because they had bad parents or traumatic childhoods. Even in loving homes, if the emotional attunement wasn't consistent enough, if the child felt, even subtly, that their needs might overwhelm or burden others, the seed of self-reliance took root. I must do it on my own becomes the silent script. Fast forward to adulthood, they enter relationships carrying that old armor. Before connection, there's distance. Before trust, there's caution. Being on their own island feels safer than risking intimacy they were never taught to handle. That's why after a breakup, an avoidant person may seem so detached, even cold. You wonder if they ever truly cared. You question your value in their life. But what you're witnessing isn't necessarily a lack of love. It's a defense mechanism built long before you ever arrived, a way to avoid the vulnerability they never learned to sit with. Maybe you spent years with them. Maybe you shared memories, built dreams, trusted that the bond you had was real. And now, standing in the aftermath, you can't help but wonder, did they ever really love me? How could something that felt so alive now seem so empty, so distant, as if it barely mattered? The truth is, for many avoidantly attached people, emotional distance isn't about not caring. It's a survival strategy. It's something they've been perfecting for years. The ability to suppress feelings, to keep vulnerability at bay, to convince themselves that needing anyone is a danger they cannot afford. When things get hard, their reflex is not to open up, it's to armor up. They distract themselves. They dive into work, hobbies, anything that keeps them from sitting with raw emotion. Because for them, feeling too much equals losing control. And control has always been their safety net. Of course, this isn't true emotional healing. It's avoidance at its core. As a therapist, I can tell you, numbing emotions doesn't make them disappear. It only buries them deeper, setting the stage for depression, burnout, or emotional shutdowns that eventually catch up. Real healing after heartbreak, real growth toward secure attachment, requires us to face what we feel, not run from it. Emotions are signals, not threats. They point us toward the old wounds still asking for our attention, the insecurities that need compassion rather than shame. And here's a hard truth. If you're waiting for your avoidant ex to give you closure, you might be waiting forever. Closure requires emotional maturity, the ability to sit in discomfort, to own mistakes, to have vulnerable conversations. These are precisely the skills many avoidants haven't developed, and frankly actively avoid. Expecting closure from someone who fears vulnerability is like asking someone who's afraid of fire to hold a flame in their hands. It's not just unlikely, it's often impossible. So when you find yourself craving that last conversation, that explanation, that acknowledgement, understand what you're truly asking for. You're asking them to show up in a way they may not yet be capable of, not because you aren't worthy of it, but because facing emotional reality is too terrifying for them. Many avoidant individuals, when faced with the intensity of breakup emotions, will shut down rather than engage. They might throw out vague phrases like, "It just didn't work," or "I can't give you what you need." And when you try to dig deeper, you hit a wall, a shrug, a blank stare, or withdrawal. Not because they don't recognize the depth of the bond you shared, but because admitting that depth would mean confronting emotions they've spent a lifetime avoiding. Unless they reach a point of true self-awareness, unless they consciously decide to dismantle the walls they built to survive, they cannot offer the kind of closure you deserve. And that's why getting stuck in cycles of hope and disappointment becomes so easy and so painful. You remember the connection. You believe in the love that once was. You hope that if you just wait a little longer, say the right thing, stay patient enough, they'll come back different. But often, all you're doing is offering your open heart to someone who isn't ready to hold it. And the longer you stay hoping for something they cannot give, the more you defer your own healing. You might believe with all your heart that what you had was real, that they truly loved you, and maybe they did in their own limited way. You tell yourself that now, since you're talking again, since things feel easier, smoother, maybe there's a real chance to rebuild what was lost. And part of you clings to that hope, watching every small sign, waiting for confirmation that this time it will be different. But here's the quiet reality most people miss. Just because you're communicating again doesn't mean you're moving forward. Sometimes what feels like progress is simply comfort in disguise, familiar enough to soothe you temporarily, but not solid enough to build anything lasting. The avoidant person often struggles with sustained emotional growth. For them, reconnecting might feel like dipping a toe into warm water, comforting, nostalgic, but not a real commitment to dive deeper. And when change moves too slowly, when emotional avoidance persists even after reconnection, that's why when I work with clients trying to rebuild with avoidant partners, we set a clear principle. You must see meaningful progress within a few months. Lingering in emotional limbo, bouncing between connection and disconnection for 6 months or longer, only erodes your self-worth and keeps you stuck. Even if you shared a decade together, even if your bond was once strong, healing and true reconnection demand movement. It doesn't mean you have to rush into rebuilding overnight, but there must be clear, tangible signs that both of you, especially the avoidant partner, are stepping into emotional responsibility. Without those signs, you're not rebuilding, you're waiting. And waiting in hope without real evidence of change is emotional self-betrayal. The hard but necessary truth is, if after 1 or 2 months of open communication you don't see true effort, deeper emotional engagement, and honest accountability from them, it's not a relationship in repair. It's a relationship repeating its old patterns. And if that's happening, it's not because you didn't love enough or didn't say the right thing. It's because they are still locked in their old survival strategies, and no amount of your effort can make them ready if they aren't willing to confront themselves. Your time, your heart, your energy are sacred. You deserve to invest them where growth is mutual, not one-sided. One of the greatest hidden barriers to change, especially for avoidantly attached individuals, is the fear that admitting something needs to change would mean admitting something is wrong with them. If you think about it, people who lean anxious often assume they are the problem by default. They believe, I'm not enough, I have to fix myself to be lovable. But for avoidant individuals, the script is different. It's not that they feel superior, it's that facing their flaws feels like an unbearable threat to their emotional survival. To acknowledge, I might need to change, would open the door to vulnerability. And vulnerability has always felt synonymous with weakness to them. So instead, they lean on denial. They prefer the belief that everything is fine, that they are fine, because facing the alternative feels too risky, too exposing. This lack of self-awareness isn't always conscious. It's a coping mechanism they learned long ago. If you don't feel it, if you don't think about it, you don't have to deal with it. And that's why true emotional growth often doesn't happen until life forces it. Through a painful breakup, a deep loneliness, or a repeated cycle of failed connections. Sometimes it takes a major rupture for an avoidant person to finally start asking the hard questions. Maybe it's not just everyone else. Maybe something inside me needs healing. That was my story too. It wasn't until my 30s that I began to realize, despite all my efforts to be independent, to be self-sufficient, my relationships were shallow. Connection felt elusive, and that quiet ache, that realization that something meaningful was missing, is what pushed me to turn inward, to explore, to heal. But not everyone gets to that point, and not everyone wants to. If you're dating or hoping to reconnect with someone who genuinely believes there's nothing they need to work on, you already have your answer. You cannot build a future with someone who refuses to meet you at the workbench. Growth in any relationship requires two people willing to look at themselves honestly. It requires two people who can say, I have things to heal and I'm willing to do that work, not for you, but for us. And yes, it's possible that during your relationship you too fell into reactive patterns. Maybe you became overly emotional, overly reactive. Maybe you protested the emotional distance in ways that felt desperate. It happens. Avoidant distancing often triggers anxious chasing, but here's the deeper truth. No matter how you reacted, a healthy relationship always takes two. Two people taking responsibility. Two people willing to stay present even when it's uncomfortable. You can, and you should, work on cultivating a secure attachment within yourself. That's the path to healthy, lasting love. That's what research consistently shows leads to the highest relationship satisfaction. Two individuals grounded in their own worth, not seeking validation, but sharing connection freely. But as you work on yourself, remember, not every avoidant is willing to face their fears. Not every avoidant will challenge the belief that needing someone equals losing themselves. And part of your growth is learning to recognize whether someone is capable of growing with you or whether clinging to them would only stunt your own healing. At the heart of it, what drives avoidant behavior isn't superiority, indifference, or cruelty. It's self-protection. It's the desperate need to defend themselves against a threat they can't fully name. The terrifying risk of dependency. To someone with an avoidant lens, vulnerability doesn't feel like connection. It feels like exposure. It feels like surrendering the very autonomy they fought so hard to preserve. When they withdraw, it's not because you're not enough, not because they found someone better, and certainly not because they didn't care at all. It's because closeness stirs up a primal fear. If I open up, if I let someone in, I might lose myself. I might become trapped. To a securely attached person, healthy interdependence, leaning on each other, sharing emotional space, feels natural, even nourishing. But to the avoidant, the same dynamic can feel suffocating, like an existential threat to their sense of self. They confuse healthy connection with enmeshment. They see the beautiful intertwining of lives not as partnership, but as loss of freedom. That's why when commitment looms closer, when intimacy deepens, their instincts scream, retreat, protect, shield. And here's where many loving, hopeful partners get trapped. When the avoidant withdraws, you chase. You start thinking, maybe I didn't express enough. Maybe if I just say the right thing, send the right message, prove my love a little harder, they'll come back. So you reach out, once, twice, 3 times. Each time with a little more urgency, a little more emotion, but instead of drawing them closer, the escalation drives them farther away. This spiral is devastating, not because your love isn't real, but because the dynamic feeds itself. The more you invest emotionally, mentally, the more valuable the connection feels to you, even as it becomes more unstable. This is called the sunk cost fallacy, the psychological trap where the more energy you pour into something, the harder it becomes to walk away, even when it's hurting you. Care scarcity, the unpredictability of their affection, makes you crave it even more. And suddenly you're not just loving them, you're addicted to the hope of being loved back. That's the cruel illusion scarcity creates. It tricks you into believing that the very absence of stability is proof of how badly you must need it. When in reality, true connection never has to be chased. It grows in openness, not confusion. It deepens through reciprocity, not through emotional starvation. And if you find yourself in that cycle, chasing, escalating, hoping, it's not because you're broken. It's because your nervous system is responding exactly how it's been wired to survive. But surviving isn't the same as thriving. And love isn't supposed to feel like a battlefield you keep losing on. If you've made it this far, I just want to take a moment to thank you. Not just for watching, but for choosing yourself by seeking clarity and growth. Today we explored the hidden dynamics behind avoidant behavior, why chasing connection only deepens the pain, and why true healing begins when you stop abandoning yourself for temporary validation. The most important lesson? Your worth was never meant to be proven by someone else's ability to stay. It was never about convincing someone to love you. It's about standing firmly in your own value and allowing love to meet you there, not chase it down. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and share your experience. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you want more grounded, healing-centered conversations like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Remember, your journey towards secure love starts with how you choose yourself today. You are worthy. You are enough. You don't have to chase what's meant for you. I'll see you in the next one.